Good evening, Facebook friends and YouTube followers. This is Rich again, back for your third video blog of the day for August 27th, 2014, around 6:30 in the evening, under cloudy skies in Billerica, Massachusetts. Might get a rain shower or stuff, then it's going to cool us off. Some news to report. The Washington Redskins are in preliminary discussions about replacing FedEx Field to move into a new stadium. FedEx Field has only been in operation since 1997, and the Redskins are thinking about ditching it for a new field. Isn't like football stadiums supposed to last 20 to 30 to 40 years with all the luxury boxes and stuff like that? Beats me. And tonight's supposed to be a board of directors meeting of Market Basket at 9:30 p.m. Hopefully this meeting takes place so we could end the stalemate and Arthur T. DeMoulis finally buys Market Basket back for $1.5 billion and get all the part-time workers back on the job as soon as possible. But with the board of directors meetings, they've been saying that. They've been having a few meetings in the past. They were supposed to have a few meetings in the past, but every time it gets called off an hour or two before it's actually happened. But maybe this is the lucky break they need. Hopefully, but I wouldn't be very shocked if they just cancel the board meeting maybe an hour or two. But we'll see how it goes. We gotta think positive about this situation, because Arthur T needs to buy Market Basket to save it from financial peril. And that's about it on the news. My next subject is about a heel turn that happened in 1995 in WCW, and it involved manager Jimmy Hart turning on his friend to the end, Hulk Hogan. Jimmy Hart is one of the most legendary managers of all time in professional wrestling. He has the nickname the Mouth of the South. He managed in the Memphis territory, and he managed 10 years in the WWE. He managed a lot of wrestlers over the years, like Jerry the King Lawler, Ted DiBiase, King Kong Bundy, Bret the Hitman Hart, the Honky Tonk Man, Greg the Hammer Valentine, Earthquake, and others. And he was mainly a heel manager. Around 1993, he turned face to manage Hulk Hogan and Brutus the Barber Beefcake in WWE, and around that time he became the real-life business manager of Hulk Hogan, and they developed a great friendship. And when Hulk Hogan went to WCW in 1994, the Mouth of the South Jimmy Hart followed him, and he led him to the WCW World title, and he was by Hogan's side for well over a year when Hogan ran wild in the WCW as WCW World Champion. And at first, the reaction Hogan got in WCW, he got big pops, but around 1995, Hogan was being kind of booed and stuff like that, but he was still Jimmy Hart was still at Hogan's side, no matter what heel he faced. I thought, Jimmy Hart would turn on Hogan sooner in WCW, like maybe when the Butcher turned on him, or when Hogan had that feud with Vader. I thought Jimmy Hart would somehow turn on Hogan and join Vader, because Vader needed a manager, but that never came to be. Around the summer of 1995, Hulk Hogan feuded with the Dungeon of Doom. The Dungeon of Doom consisted of Kevin Sullivan, who was nicknamed the Taskmaster, and he had a guy which was his claim to be his father, called the Master. In reality, the Master was legendary wrestler King Curtis Iakea, and also involved in the Dungeon of Doom were the Uganda giant Kamala, Shock, who was Avalanche, but he could not use Avalanche anymore because the character was similar to Earthquake, and WWE sent legal threats to WCW saying that the Avalanche character was similar to Earthquake, and WWE trademarked that name, so he had to be rebranded. The Zodiac, who was the Brutus the Barber Beefcake, under like a face paint and stuff, and Maine. Also around this time, around the summertime, a 7'4" giant of a man, Paul Wright, who was nicknamed the Giant, and came into WCW, and they claimed he was the son of Andre the Giant, but this was a storyline purposes only. Andre the Giant never had a legitimate son at all, and they were like, the Dungeon of Doom was feuding with Hulk Hogan and stuff like that. And during a cage match at Fall Brawl 1995, Hogan, Lex Luger, Sting, and Macho Man Randy Savage faced off against the Dungeon of Doom, the Zodiac, the Shark, Kamala, and Ming in War Games. And if Hogan won, he got 5 minutes with the Taskmaster Kevin Sullivan. If Hogan's teams won, Hogan team won. And then Hogan got 5 minutes with with Kevin Sullivan, but the Giant interferes in the 5 minutes, and Hogan gets hurt, and he had to sell a neck brace with an injured neck. And the next couple of weeks later, on Monday Nitro, Hogan and Jimmy Hart were doing an interview, and then when they were like leaving the ringside area, a mysterious woman dressed up. A mysterious woman attacks Jimmy Hart and Hulk Hogan, and it was Kevin Sullivan in disguise. And then the Giant and the Zodiac come out, and they start attacking Hogan, and several wrestlers were trying to come and rescue Hogan, but they couldn't. And then they shaved off Hogan's mustache. That's humiliating. And then they try to cut his hair, but the referees in suits drive him out of the ring. I think in real life, they had to shave Hogan's mustache, because I heard something was doing a movie which he didn't. That his character in the movie had played with no mustache. So that's how they do it. And then the next week, Hogan comes out with Jimmy Hart on Monday Nitro, and he was all dressed in black. And this was like Hogan was kind of turning to the dark side. I think this was a trial run to see if Hogan was going to be like a heel or something. This was a prelude to the NWO. And then Hogan says he was going to challenge the Giant to a match at Halloween Havoc. It was going to be a monster truck match at first, and then a regular wrestling match. And then the next week, the week before before Halloween Havoc, the Dungeon of Doom introduced a new character called Yeti, who was played by Ron Reese, who was a 7'2" tall wrestler who was trained by the late Big John Studd and Carol Kowalski. And he was all dressed up in like Yeti costume. And then 1995 Halloween Havoc happens, and they first have the monster truck match between Hulk Hogan and the Giant, and it was on top of the Cobo Hall, which was adjacent to the Joe Louis Arena, because the pay-per-view was at Joe Louis Arena. And like Hogan won the monster truck match, and then the Giant attacks him, and then they were like fighting on the edge of the roof, and then like Hogan gets a position with the Giant, and the Giant falls off the roof. Scary stuff. But Giant didn't. They must have had something like for him to land safely. And then the pay-per-view match happens between Hulk Hogan and the Giant. Then Hulkster comes out with Jimmy Hart, and Hulk Hogan grabs the mic and then says, so I don't know what happened to the Giant. This wasn't supposed to happen. And about 30 seconds later, the Giant comes out with Kevin Sullivan. So he must have survived the fall off the roof. And then they have an amazing match. This was the Giant's first match ever. And he was pretty good for a guy who's never been in the ring before. Hogan, this was probably a very great match. And Hogan slammed the Giant after like being dominated by the Giant for most of the match. And then when Hogan does the leg drop, Jimmy Hart the championship belt, hits the referee, and Jimmy Hart acts like nothing happened, but the fans were pointing at Jimmy Hart. And then Hogan tells Jimmy Hart to come up and try to revive the referee, but Jimmy Hart throws the referee down and hits Hogan with the WCW Championship belt. Hogan gets turned down by his manager, and then he's trying to beat him up, but then the Giant comes up and attacks him, and Jimmy Hart says, "Get him, get him, get him." This was a plot. This was a plot all along, and when I watch the tapes of the matches, see it a couple of days ago, there's actually a lot of fans who were actually cheering for Jimmy Hart's heel turn and Hogan. I think this is when Hogan's popularity was real low, because I think a lot of the fans were sick and tired of Hogan wearing the red and the yellow, and with the Giant beating up Hogan, and then Jimmy Hart and Kevin Sullivan waved down Lex Luger and Randy Macho Man Savage. I thought Macho Man Randy Savage and Lex Luger were going to save Hogan, but like Jimmy Hart hits Savage with the belt, and then Luger starts attacking Savage, and he was on it all along, and then the Yeti comes along, and then attacks Hogan and stuff like that. Does the double bear hug with the Giant, and then they do the double bear hug on Savage, and they do the torture rack on Hogan and Savage as well. And whose side's on? That's what Tony Schiavone said. And Bobby the Brain Heenan also said, "This is the end of Hulkamania." And he also said, "You'll never see a pay-per-view like this again." And then like Jimmy Hart embraces with Lex Luger and Kevin Sullivan and the Giant, and they walk out of the ring together, and the Giant has the championship belt. Giant won the match by disqualification, but this was a thing. About a week later on Monday Night Raw, Jimmy Hart signed the contract for Hogan to face the Giant at Halloween Havoc for the WCW World Championship, but he put a clause in the contract that said if the Hogan would lose by disqualification, he would lose the championship, which that's unprecedented, but there was officials at WCW says they didn't allow that, said that was a dubious thing to happen, and they stripped the Giant of the title. The Giant was never acknowledged as a champ. That reign that he had for 6 days was not acknowledged by WCW. And this is the time when Hogan's creative control was getting real big. He didn't want to lose to the Giant, lose cleanly. He wanted to put the Giant over for the WCW World title, but I think the bookers did not really want the Giant to win the title the first match and stuff like that. And one of these quotes that Bobby Heenan said at the end of the pay-per-view says, "You'll never see Jimmy Hart work with Hulk Hogan again." That's a lie. He worked with Hulk Hogan backstage, and then eventually he became his manager again years later. And what I thought this heel turn was, pretty good, because face managers in wrestling are useless. Why do we need face managers in wrestling? Are useless. And Jimmy Hart just went for a ride with Hulk Hogan for a couple of years, but then once Hogan, when it was time for Hogan to Jimmy Hart to turn on Hogan, that was the perfect plan. He should have did it a long time before, but this was a perfect guy with the manage the Giant and the Dungeon of Doom and Lex Luger and others. And they continue to have a feud, Hogan and Jimmy the Alpha the South Hart, in WCW for months until Hogan officially turns heel and joins the New World Order. This is probably the lowest point of Hogan's time in WCW with all the monster truck stuff and the Jimmy Hart turning on him. Okay? That's about it on that. I'll be back later for my third and final video blog of the night. Goodbye, Facebook friends and YouTube followers. See you tonight.